Dr. Alden was startled, a chill rippling through him, as a harrowing cry echoed through the air, cutting through the dense foliage of Sable Ridge Preserve. It wasn't just any sound, it carried urgency, a desperate plea, unlike anything he had ever heard before. Without hesitation, Alden turned toward the source, moving as quickly as the rugged terrain allowed. The cry grew louder, more frantic, urging him onward. When he stepped into a clearing, he froze. Standing before him was a full-grown female elephant, her towering presence commanding his attention. But it wasn't her size that left him stunned, it was her behavior. She locked eyes with him, her gaze filled with a pleading intensity. Her trunk reached out toward him, and she let out another, heart-wrenching cry. It was as if she was begging for his help. Alden's mind raced. He knew elephants were highly intelligent and deeply emotional creatures, but this level of interaction was unparalleled. As he watched its movements, he noticed that its left foreleg was not supporting much weight. At 65, his energy was waning, but his commitment to wildlife conservation remained steadfast. "It's injured," he muttered, immediately calling his team for medical supplies. He grabbed his radio, calling, "Juniper, I have an injured elephant here, foreleg. Get the med kit right now. I'm near the East Ridge." Juniper's response came back. "Okay. Be careful, Alden." He glanced at Mila, her eyes locked with his. "I'm here to help. Can you show me?" To his astonishment, the elephant responded. She lifted her injured leg slightly, releasing a low, mournful rumble. Drawing closer, Alden spotted the problem, a large thorn deeply lodged in her footpad. "Oh, you poor thing," he whispered, his heart aching for her. "We'll get that out for you." The elephant remained still as he inspected her wound, emitting soft rumbles of discomfort, but never showing fear or aggression. It was as though she trusted him completely. When his team arrived, they were awestruck to see Alden so close to a wild elephant. "Dr. Gray," Juniper called out, her voice tinged with concern. "Be careful." "She's asking for help," Alden reassured them calmly. "We need to remove this thorn. Juniper, prepare a local anesthetic. Cassian, get the long-handled pliers." As his team approached, following Alden's composed example, he continued speaking soothingly to the elephant. "You're so brave. We'll have you feeling better soon." The procedure that followed was unlike anything Alden had experienced. Despite her immense size, the elephant allowed them to administer the anesthetic and remove the thorn with remarkable gentleness. Her unwavering stillness and attentive gaze mesmerized the team. When the thorn, a jagged 6-inch piece of agony, was finally extracted, the elephant trumpeted a sound that resonated with relief. Testing her weight gingerly, she realized the pain had eased and turned her eyes back to Alden. What he saw there stole his breath. Gratitude radiated from her, mingled with an understanding and depth of emotion he had never imagined possible. Slowly, she extended her trunk toward him. Alden remained still, barely breathing, as she gently touched his face. In that moment, the boundary between man and beast seemed to dissolve, replaced by an unspoken bond born of trust and compassion. The touch was so gentle, so profoundly connective, that Alden felt his eyes fill with tears. "You're welcome," he murmured, his hand rising to softly pat her trunk. "You're truly welcome." For a brief but eternal moment, man and elephant stood there, united by a bond that transcended species, speaking in a language of trust and gratitude. Finally, with a soft, resonant rumble, Mila turned and began her journey away, her steps now steady and free of pain. Reaching the edge of the clearing, she paused, looked back at Alden and his team, and raised her trunk high, releasing a trumpet that sang not of distress, but of joy, a jubilant farewell. Then she vanished into the dense foliage, leaving the team frozen in astonished silence. "Dr. Alden," Juniper whispered, her voice breaking the stillness. "What just happened?" Alden shook his head, still overwhelmed. "I'm not sure," he admitted, his voice laden with wonder. "But I think we just witnessed something extraordinary, something that could redefine everything we know about elephants, their emotions, their intelligence." As they trekked back to the verdant horizon center, Alden's mind churned with thoughts. This encounter had profoundly unsettled his long-held beliefs, challenging his understanding of these magnificent creatures. He had always known they were intelligent and deeply emotional beings. But this display of direct communication and trust was beyond anything he had imagined. That evening, seated by the glow of the campfire, Alden recorded the day's events in his journal. For once, his usual scientific detachment failed him. How could sterile data possibly convey the depth of emotion in Mila's eyes, the deliberate tenderness of her touch, the silent plea for help, and the unmistakable gratitude that followed? As he wrote, an idea began to take shape. This moment couldn't simply fade into memory. It had to lead to something greater, a deeper study, a story to share with the world. If people could grasp the intelligence and emotion elephants possessed, it might forever alter humanity's perspective on conservation, on animals, and on life itself. In the weeks that followed, Alden immersed himself in his work with renewed passion. He sifted through every piece of research he could find on elephant cognition, sought stories from local communities living near the Sable Ridge Preserve, and spent countless hours in the bush, hoping for another interaction with Mila or an elephant displaying similar behavior. His focus became single-minded, bordering on obsession. The team noticed, but Alden was undeterred, convinced he was on the brink of uncovering something transformative. Nearly a month later, the unthinkable happened. Observing a family group of elephants from a respectful distance, Alden noticed one adult female acting strangely. Her trunk hovered in the air as though catching a scent. Then, to his astonishment, she began to move purposefully toward him. The rest of the herd stayed behind, watching calmly as though they understood her intent. Alden's pulse quickened as he recognized her. It was Mila. As she approached, Mila let out a low, resonant rumble that felt like a greeting. "Hello, girl," Alden said softly, scarcely able to believe his eyes. "Do you remember me?" Mila's response was breathtaking. She extended her trunk, gently brushing his face in the same deliberate gesture she had made after he had removed the thorn from her foot. It was unmistakable. She remembered. For the next hour, Alden sat in quiet awe as Mila stayed near, occasionally reaching out to touch him with her trunk. Her gestures and soft vocalizations hinted at an effort to communicate, though their meaning eluded him. Alden spoke to her continuously, narrating his actions, asking questions he knew she couldn't answer with words. The interaction felt otherworldly, an unspoken dialogue between two vastly different beings. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Mila's herd began to move. With one last gentle touch of her trunk to Alden's cheek, she turned to rejoin them. Before disappearing into the twilight, she looked back and released a low rumble, a sound Alden had never heard before. It felt like an invitation, an unspoken promise of further connection. That night, sleep was elusive for Alden. His thoughts raced with the implications of what had occurred. This wasn't a one-off incident. Mila remembered him, sought him out, and appeared to actively desire communication. The realization was nothing short of groundbreaking. In the months that followed, the encounters became more frequent. Alden began referring to the elephant as Mila, a name that felt like a gift. Each meeting brought new complexities in her vocalizations and gestures. Driven to decode this emerging dialogue, Alden worked tirelessly with linguists and animal behavior experts. He meticulously recorded every rumble, every movement Mila made, and dedicated himself to observing her interactions with her herd. patterns began to surface. Certain vocalizations seemed tied to specific ideas or needs, and her trunk gestures bore distinct meanings. Alden realized he was witnessing a language, a rich, intricate form of communication entirely unique to elephants. As Dr. Alden's understanding grew, so did his ability to communicate with Mila. He carefully replicated her low rumbles and subtle gestures, and to his astonishment, she responded with remarkable clarity. Together, they developed a rudimentary form of dialogue, a basic yet genuine exchange of thoughts. About 6 months after their first encounter, Mila's behavior shifted dramatically. Instead of lingering near Alden to converse, she seemed unusually restless, her movements urging him to follow. Alden hesitated briefly before stepping forward, compelled by her urgency. She guided him deeper into the heart of Sable Ridge Preserve, further than he had ever dared to venture. Along the way, Alden noticed other elephants in the shadows, their watchful eyes following his progress like silent sentinels. At last, Mila stopped in a small clearing. Alden froze, his breath catching as he took in the sight before him. In the center lay a baby elephant, its tiny body trembling, each labored breath a battle. Mila turned to Alden, her large eyes filled with an emotion so raw it was almost human, pleading. She gestured toward the calf and then back to him, her message undeniable. Help. Please. Alden's instincts as a veterinarian surged to the forefront. He crouched near the fragile creature, acutely aware of Mila and the other elephants standing vigil nearby. A quick examination revealed severe dehydration and a dangerously high fever. Suspecting an infection, Alden reached for his radio, summoning Juniper and Cassian to bring emergency medical supplies. Turning to Mila, he spoke softly, his tone steady. "I'm going to help," he assured her, locking eyes with the towering elephant. "But I need you to trust me." "Can you do that?" Mila responded with a low, resonant rumble and gently touched his shoulder with her trunk, a gesture as reassuring as it was profound. Alden understood. It was her way of saying, "I trust you." What followed was an extraordinary act of interspecies collaboration. When Juniper and Cassian arrived with supplies, the elephants formed a protective ring around the clearing, their silent presence both solemn and comforting. With meticulous care, Alden administered fluids, antibiotics, and fever reducers. Mila stayed by the calf's side, her trunk occasionally brushing Alden's arm as if to encourage him. The trust these wild animals placed in him was unlike anything he'd ever experienced. Hours passed, each moment fraught with tension, until finally the calf's fever broke. Slowly, shakily, it rose to its feet. When it stumbled toward Mila, the herd erupted in a chorus of triumphant trumpets. The sound reverberated through the clearing, a jubilant celebration of life and survival. As Alden gathered his equipment, he felt a gentle nudge at his shoulder. Turning, he met Mila's gaze. Her eyes held a depth of emotion that transcended words. Deliberately, she wrapped her trunk around him, a gesture so tender it brought tears to his eyes. Alden hugged her back, overwhelmed by the profound connection between them. In that moment, Alden realized his work was far from over. The events of the day had opened a door to possibilities he could scarcely imagine. Word of his extraordinary bond with Mila and her herd quickly spread, captivating the scientific community. Invitations to conferences poured in, and his expertise was sought for conservation projects and documentaries. Yet, despite the whirlwind of attention, Alden remained devoted to Mila and her family. With the support of linguists and animal behaviorists, Alden delved deeper into elephant communication. The team compiled an extensive dictionary of sounds and gestures, even developing rudimentary software to translate Mila's vocalizations into rough human equivalents. But it wasn't just language Alden was uncovering. His continued interactions with Mila revealed a sophisticated world of elephant cognition, emotional intelligence, and social complexity. These magnificent creatures demonstrated problem-solving skills, abstract thought, and emotions as nuanced as those of humans. One of Alden's most striking revelations came about a year after the calf's rescue. Arriving at the Verdant Horizon Center one morning, he found Mila waiting for him. This, in itself, was not unusual, but the object she held delicately in her trunk was. Alden approached cautiously as Mila set it at his feet, a carefully stripped branch, sharpened at one end. Alden knelt to examine it, his mind racing. Was this a tool? Had Mila crafted it intentionally, and what did she want him to understand? Over the following weeks, Mila brought him more objects: smooth stones, oddly shaped bark, even a discarded bottle. Each offering felt deliberate, as if she were sharing her discoveries. This exchange marked a new frontier in Alden's research. Mila wasn't merely communicating, she was teaching, sharing, building a bridge between two worlds. The bond forged between man and elephant began to reshape not only Alden's work, but the broader understanding of what it means to coexist with such extraordinary beings. What stood out was the peculiar item Mila cradled delicately in her trunk. As Dr. Alden moved closer, she carefully placed it on the ground before him. It was a branch, but not just any ordinary one. The leaves had been meticulously stripped, the smaller twigs removed, and one end had been roughly yet undeniably sharpened. Alden's mind spun as he inspected it. Could this be a tool? Had Mila crafted it herself? And above all, what compelled her to bring it to him? In the weeks that followed, Mila presented Alden with other objects: smooth stones worn by water, bark pieces with intriguing shapes, and even a discarded plastic bottle that had sadly made its way into their habitat. Each time she would offer the item, her eyes fixed on him with an intensity that demanded attention. Gradually, Alden began to understand. Mila wasn't simply handing over random items, she was sharing things she found curious or remarkable. It was as though she was gifting him glimpses into her world. This wasn't just communication, it was an exchange of discoveries, a bridge between species that had never been crossed before. This astonishing behavior opened a new chapter in Alden's research. He and his team began to explore not just how elephants communicated, but also the nature of what they shared. Their findings revealed a sophisticated awareness of their surroundings, an innate curiosity about the unknown, and an eagerness to convey their observations, traits strikingly reminiscent of human behavior. As time passed, Verdant Horizon Center flourished into a globally recognized institution for elephant studies, but it became more than a hub for scientific research. Under Alden's leadership, it evolved into a sanctuary of connection and mutual respect between humans and elephants. Researchers and tourists traveled from across the globe to witness the unique relationship that Alden and his team had cultivated with Mila's herd. They marveled at the way Alden and his colleagues communicated with the elephants, using a combination of vocal sounds, gestures, and even rudimentary symbolic tools. Among the visitors, none left as profound an impact as a group of school children from a nearby community. Many of these children had grown up fearing elephants, viewing them as destructive pests. But as they observed the harmonious interactions between Alden's team and the herd, their fear gradually gave way to awe. Mila, ever the gracious host, seemed to relish their visits. She would approach the observation area, performing what could only be described as playful demonstrations. She manipulated objects with her trunk, made a variety of sounds, and occasionally sprayed water at the protective glass, to the sheer delight of her audience. One day, a little girl named Amina, no older than 7, posed a question that altered the center's mission forever. Her wide eyes sparkled with curiosity as she asked, "Dr. Alden, do you think Mila could teach us how to talk to elephants?" Alden was momentarily speechless, struck by the profound simplicity of her question. He had been so focused on decoding elephant communication scientifically that he hadn't considered its potential as an educational bridge. "You know what, Amina?" he replied, a smile spreading across his face. "That's a wonderful idea. Would you like to try?" Thus, the Elephant Language Program was born. Alden and his team developed an innovative curriculum designed to teach the fundamentals of elephant communication to both children and adults. Participants learned to interpret elephant body language, recognize different vocalizations, and even mimic basic sounds. The program was an instant success. Children who once feared elephants eagerly engaged in learning their language. Farmers began to understand the behaviors and needs of these majestic creatures, leading to more harmonious coexistence. Even former poachers, moved by the elephant's evident intelligence and emotional depth, became ardent advocates for conservation. Mila became the heart of this endeavor. She appeared to grasp the program's significance and embraced her role as a teacher with remarkable enthusiasm. She patiently demonstrated sounds and gestures, often repeating them until her human students succeeded. Her gentleness with the children was extraordinary. She corrected them softly when they erred and rumbled contentedly when they succeeded. As the years rolled on, Alden watched with immense pride as a generation grew up with a deep respect and understanding of elephants. The work at Verdant Horizon Center extended far beyond scientific discovery. It was changing lives and perspectives, fostering a world where humans and elephants could coexist in mutual respect. The journey was far from seamless. Around 5 years after launching the Elephant Language Program, Dr. Alden received unsettling news. A band of poachers had been sighted perilously close to the area where Mila's herd usually roamed. Alden's heart pounded as he swiftly organized an emergency response team. Just as preparations began, a deep, familiar rumble broke through the tense air. Mila had arrived at the Verdant Horizon Center, visibly agitated. Years of working alongside her had sharpened Alden's ability to read her emotions, and he instantly sensed the gravity of the situation. "Mila," he asked urgently, "what's wrong? Is it the poachers? Is your herd in danger?" Mila responded with a flurry of movements and low vocalizations. The communication system they had developed over time allowed Alden to decipher her message. The poachers weren't just close, they had managed to separate a young calf from the herd. Without hesitation, Alden sprang into action. Explaining the dire circumstances to his team, he said firmly, "Mila's leading us to her herd. Stay alert and follow her pace. We can't afford any mistakes." The team nodded, their determination matching his. As they navigated the dense terrain, Alden couldn't help but marvel at Mila's trust. "She's risking everything," he murmured, more to himself than anyone else. "Bringing us to her family, she knows we're here to help." Juniper, his assistant, glanced at him. "It's incredible, isn't it? She's breaking every instinct. It's like she understands us on a deeper level." Alden gave a small nod, his gaze fixed on Mila as she moved purposefully ahead. The team advanced cautiously, their breaths shallow as they slipped through the thick foliage. Soon, faint voices came into earshot. The poachers. Alden clenched his jaw, his heart pounding in his chest. "We've got them," he whispered into his radio, signaling for local law enforcement to move into position. Through the underbrush, Alden's sharp eyes found the camp. A baby elephant, its legs tethered cruelly to a tree, shifted nervously, letting out soft, terrified cries. The sight pierced his heart. "Poor thing," Juniper whispered, her voice trembling. "We have to get it out of there." "Not yet," Alden replied, his tone firm but gentle. "One wrong move and we could spook them, or worse, put the calf in more danger." He turned to Cassian. "Cass, radio the officers. Let them know we're in position but waiting for their lead." Cassian nodded, his voice steady despite the tension. "Understood. Relay it now." Alden glanced at Mila, who stood at the edge of the clearing, her eyes fixed on the calf. She let out a low, mournful rumble that made Alden's chest tighten. "We'll get your baby back," he said softly, meeting her gaze. "I promise." Juniper crouched beside him, her face set with determination. "What's the plan?" Alden's eyes flicked between the camp and the baby elephant. "We wait for the law enforcement to neutralize the poachers. As soon as they move in, we'll go straight for the calf. Mila and her herd are close. Once it's free, they'll know exactly what to do." The moments stretched into what felt like an eternity, the weight of the situation pressing heavily on the group. Then, over the radio, a quiet but decisive voice came through. "Officers in position, ready to move on your mark." With the poachers' attention diverted by the encroaching authorities, Alden's team focused on freeing the calf. As the ropes were loosened, the calf let out a piercing cry of distress. Almost instantly, the call was answered by a symphony of trumpets from the nearby herd. The elephants had been anxiously waiting. Mila was the first to emerge from the trees, rushing to the calf's side. The reunion between mother and child was profoundly moving. Mila carefully examined the calf with her trunk, emitting soothing rumbles to ease its fear. Once assured of the calf's safety, Mila turned her gaze to Alden. Her eyes reflected unmistakable gratitude. Reaching out with her trunk, Mila gently touched Alden's face, a gesture of connection they had shared many times. "You're welcome," Alden whispered, his voice heavy with emotion. "Thank you for trusting us." The incident became a defining moment for the Verdant Horizon Center. News of elephants and humans collaborating to thwart poachers captivated global audiences, drawing attention to the elephant language program and underscoring the critical need to protect these magnificent creatures. Inspired by the event, Alden envisioned an expanded initiative, training local villagers to become elephant guardians. These individuals would master advanced communication techniques, protect habitats, mediate human-elephant conflicts, and educate their communities about conservation. The program quickly gained traction. For young people in rural areas with limited opportunities, becoming guardians offered a path to meaningful, respected careers. Meanwhile, the elephants, with their profound intelligence, seemed to grasp and embrace the guardians' roles. Now, in her late 40s, Mila, the esteemed matriarch of her herd, remained at the center of these efforts. With extraordinary patience, she guided each new group of guardians, helping them comprehend the nuances of elephant communication and behavior. Watching the program thrive, Alden often reflected on how far they had come. The frightened, injured elephant who had sought his help years ago had sparked a movement that was transforming lives, both human and elephant. Mila's courage and trust had set in motion a revolution of understanding and respect, changing the world one connection at a time. People began to perceive elephants not as mere creatures of the wild, but as sentient, emotional beings worthy of dignity and protection. One evening, as the sun dipped low over the golden expanse of Sable Ridge Preserve, Dr. Alden sat quietly on the observation deck of the Verdant Horizon Center. Nearby, Mila and her herd moved gracefully, their immense silhouettes outlined against the amber glow of the horizon. Mila lifted her gaze and caught Alden's eyes across the distance. With a slow and deliberate motion, she raised her trunk, a gesture Alden had come to understand as a greeting, a silent acknowledgement of connection. He raised his hand in reply, a soft smile spreading across his face at this wordless exchange between two friends. Sitting there, watching the herd graze in serene harmony, Alden reflected on the remarkable path that had brought him to this moment. Hope swelled in his chest, a quiet but determined faith in the future. There were still battles to fight, countless hurdles in the ongoing mission to protect these magnificent animals, but Alden understood that where knowledge bloomed, compassion followed, and with compassion came the resolve to act. Wasn't this story just incredible? Mila's journey from a desperate cry for help to forming this deep bond with Dr. Alden is truly a reminder of the beauty and intelligence of animals and how much we still have to learn from them. What part of Mila's story touched you the most? And if this story inspired you, maybe share it with friends. Let's get more people talking about how incredible these creatures are and why they deserve our protection. Thanks for sticking around until the end. I truly appreciate it.